Canyon ran an absolute clinic on Lee Sin. That was that was maybe the best Lee Sin overall series that I have fucking ever seen.
Oh, stomping, yeah.
Lee Sin is the GOAT playmaking champion in League of Legends history.
Exactly, yeah. That's the jungle champ you want to be best on, isn't it? Yeah.
Like it by far, throughout the history of League of Legends, since the release of Lee Sin has been the best jungle champion to watch, played by some of the best junglers in history. And we may have been looking at the best single best of 5 Lee Sin performance ever in that match, because Canyon was absolutely magnificent. But that's expected at this event, is that there's going to be strong Lee Sin play. What nobody would have predicted coming in was that this poppy jungle was going to be a thing. What nobody would have predicted is Faker basically playing mid lane support. And I think the true irony of what we're seeing is Faker plays 2 games of Aftershock Lissandra into LeBlanc, which is, look, you got an Aphelios on your team and you're just expecting that Aphelios to carry. Not a bad idea, right? You get that extra you get that extra durability. You're just playing a frontliner, playing it for crowd control, playing to use your Q to push out the wave and then roam the map and place wards. I think the irony of what's going on with Faker is that he's basically become Bengi. That's actually true at this point in time. He is literally wandering around their jungle, focusing on jungle pathing and ward placement for his teammates and being a support. It's wild to me that that's where his career has gone.
I think it's insane how well T1 are able to utilize that, though. Because, like, when you watch the Hanwha series, right? Yes, you've got him kind of just neutralizing Chovy. Chovy will farm, do his thing, but how well when they got to the mid game, were just like, cool, we understand exactly where the jungler is. We've picked up little bit of an advantage, saying like we've got to push mid, or maybe Faker's got a really smart reset timing, so then he's in the mid, he hasn't had to use his teleport. And how well they utilize these factors to just completely dismantle Hanwha. It was actually disgusting.
Yeah, and they knew what the win condition was. They looked at their opponent, they said, Chovy is dealing all of the damage on this team. He is number 1 in the entire worlds in damage percent, damage per minute. Fine, have LeBlanc. I'm just going to play fucking Aftershock Lissandra into it and just push out the wave super fast and run around the map. I'm going to sacrifice the wave. I'm not even going to be in mid. I'm just going to place wards so you can't roam. You can't do anything. I'm just show up bot. Gumayushi's going to play every game on Aphelios, and we're just going to feed Gumayushi, and that's going to be the win condition, right? But it's not only that. It's like you're saying. They've been much more proactive about when they swap the top side for objectives. Like they're sending their bot lane into the top lane. In fact, they just give up objectives. They gave up First Herald and First Dragon in the 3rd game against Hanwha because they just didn't give a fuck. They were just playing for plate gold on bottom side because Faker would just shove out, and that would give pressure into the bot lane because there would be pink wards all over the bot side jungle of Hanwha when they were playing on blue side, and that would just be enough for them to push up, take the plate gold, and make that trade, then swap up to the top lane and do the same shit. And it's like, that is such intelligent game planning. And as I said earlier, like Faker basically is the head coach on that team right now, from my understanding, from talking to people in the scene over there. And that knowledge is interesting that Faker is choosing to play this role, because it's not like he can't play another way. It's that he is basically playing like Bengi. He is playing Nunu. He is running around their jungle warding and denying XP and just being a pain in the ass.
You mean you want to die a legend, or you live to see yourself become Bengi? Is that how it works in fucking League of Legends?
You either retire a legend or live long enough to become Bengi. But it is crazy to think about that this legit was Bengi style. It was path your way to success, steal shit, put deep wards in.
The other joke is, obviously Faker was essentially the jungler. He just controlled it like a fucking Shackle clone or something. And now he just is the jungler, Monte. Like, he just plays that role, doesn't he? Just roam the whole map all day long. Why not? Thing is, so I agree. It's a distinction to make, because that's the difference. If this was in a previous year where, like, for example, Koma was still the coach, then you would actually say, wow, it says a lot about what Koma thinks about Faker. Like, sort of relegated him to being a supportive element, never builds the draft around it. It's actually the opposite, as you say, Monte, because that was what we speculated, basically. when the coaching changes came in after like the first split, basically, is even though they've officially named a guy head coach, like effectively, if you look who it is, it looks like that was just
it's
like
Stardust.
your job will be to wear the hat of the head coach and Faker will do
player.
everything else, you know. Exactly. It was like Faker's the real head coach now, mate. Like he's going to run things from here on out. Okay, you don't need to, you just sit in the corner and have your official title, you know.
Well, the Peyton Manning, I think, analogy is so apt because, like, you know, Peyton Manning had such a incredible career based on his own abilities, but the last time he won a championship, he was like broken for half the season, like literally not even playing playoff games. And then the Super Bowl he won was entirely won by the defense, and he just kind of sat there and managed the clock. And that's what Faker's doing. He's effectively just managing the clock right now in the game. And he doesn't take gold, guys. Like, he is the lowest economy mid laner at this event. He's taking no gold. Not even from his own lane at this point. He's just leaving it there to die while he puts pressure on the side lanes. And I honestly can't fault it. It's working really, really well because in spite of the fact that Faker is sacrificing his own waves, he's not taking any gold in the side lanes either. The gold differential is the highest for T1 at 15 minutes of any team in this tournament. He is literally leaving gold on the field, but he is playing in such a way that they are more than making up for it on other parts of the map.
By the way, this is probably a discussion we should actually have, because I feel like actually League of Legends, in some ways in the meta, I know some people don't like some of the champion picks and all the rest of it. It's not as open as summer was. But even so, I feel like the game itself is almost in the healthiest, like, strategical position I've seen it in years.
Yeah, it's good.
Because literally, it's not about winning lane. It is not at all about winning lane right now. Like, beyond, like, certain, like, maybe if top lane won super, super hard and had, like, 4 kills. But unless something really extreme happens, it ain't about coming out of lane like, wow, I'm up 20 CS. Who gives a fuck? Like, it's about what champions are the kills on, what comp do you have, how many dragons did you take? Like, the mid game's everything now. I think it's made the game really interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think it's very much a case of, like, teams now understanding how they can, like, lose here but gain twice over here, right? And you're seeing that a lot when it comes to, like, Rift Heralds and turret plates and, like, everything else. And I think that's where T1, like, really shown against Hanwha was like, hey, look, we can actually, like, yes, we will maybe lose a wave here with this reset, but we keep the teleport, which is now going to net us 3 kills bot. I lost 200 gold here. You've lost a whole lot more on the bot side of the map. And I think it's a really cool way of playing the game. And it shows, I think, the understanding that Faker has of the game, where it's like, look, I know exactly where I need to be at what point in time. And I will happily give up this, so then Gumayusi, I always mess up that name, apologies, but will do a hell of a lot better in the bottom side of the map as a result, especially on things like the Aphelios. But even when they got into the mid game, right, the understanding that they had of, hey, like, showing on waves, how we're going to play off of 2 lanes, how we're going to start moving around and making sure that we're able to continue with the pressure that we've gained from the early stage was absolutely nuts. Now, I think it's kind of on easy mode against Hanwha as well, because they're not really a team, right? It's Chovy and he has to try and do everything, but I still think it was really impressive to see how coordinated and how well all the pieces of the puzzle were fitting together, and it was just so fluid throughout both the early game and mid game.
Yeah, obviously, like, I don't expect them to beat Damwon for that reason. Like, it's one thing to completely neutralize Chovy and just not have Morgan be a threat at all. Like, that's just not going to happen when you play Damwon. So they may come up with a different strategy, which I think is what's going to make this best of 5 so fascinating. Is I expect some weird shit to come out, especially from T1. But they've been playing their own style this whole tournament so far. I mean, Faker is just TF Lissandra Orianna, basically. And it's working. It's working extremely well. And I think it's, you know, Faker knows that he's not the player that he used to be, especially compared to players like Chovy and Showmaker right now. But he is doing things that neither of those players can do because he's utilizing his wealth of knowledge from his massive history of League of Legends to understand how to play the map better and to understand how to play the macro game better. I don't think Showmaker or Chovy can do either of those things, and they can't shot call in the same way in the mid and late game that he can call. So it's really cool to see this, honestly. Like, even if they don't make it past the semifinals, there hasn't been enough focus, in my opinion, on what Team One is doing, because that story is so good right now.
It's like I say, it really is like he's trying to do his Toynbee pre-season 11 impression and win that way, which is cool. You know, that's cool in its own way.
I think it's also the the decision making around team fights is really strong as well. Because there was a couple of them around Rift Herald. I think it was I'm trying to figure it out. I think it was game 2, where I was like, all right, you got the Gwen, Poppy, and Aphelios still needs to scale. And I was like, they just gave up Rift Herald, don't try and fight this. But they came in like really well coordinated. They knew exactly how they needed to piece apart Hanwha. And I think that's really difficult to do. It almost felt like 5 people working with one brain rather than like a bunch of different intermingling parts. So I think as well for T1, like some of their team fights and early game skirmishes have been really, really good, which I think has set them up right where you've got the ability to move around the map better and the ability to understand what you're going to do in 30 to 40 seconds time. I think it kind of lends itself to that. But I was really impressed when I saw those skirmishes. Like, damn, this is actually not only a team that understands, hey, we can sit back and scale, but when a scaling comp can also go against a mid-game composition just with the current strengths and with exactly what's happening on the map.
There's the one reason I would like Damwon to, aside from the fact they are the best team, aside from that, the only other reason I would like Damwon to win Worlds is this, Monty. I'm looking at the last years, right? Obviously, people might know, famously, they always said in fucking TSM that they'd never get Koreans, right? I mean, Hooney, obviously speaks English, so that one's fine. That's sort of by the by. And technically, when they got Hooney, he was an NA resident. That's a fact I'll always point out. He was no longer an import player. So logically, Monty, I think we could actually basically convince Reggie to buy Ghost, because we could say, dude, he's just won Worlds back to back. I'm thinking about 10 million, because you're all telling me, you morons out there who think cryptocurrency is definitely, like, yo, they've got all that money from FTX. Like, buy him, bring him in. Obviously, it'll be like their biggest fucking, if you think selling Sword Art at the top was selling at the top, but fucking hell, mate. Again, so I think they can trick him. I think they can get him on this one. And the idea that's when you'd hold out. I don't want any Korean season 4 to season 7, you fool. I'm going to stick with Wild Turtle and Doublelift. The idea you'd not do that. You'd hold, strong hold. The irony there, Reggie, is you stopped holding at the wrong point, mate. And then you'd go, well, I'll just betray every principle I claim to believe in and get a Korean now. And then you obviously just tank the whole team, wouldn't you? Because if you didn't see the whole Bang adventure, you don't really want those sorts of Koreans as the big import. You want like that super hard carry 1v9 guy. You don't want the guy who's like, I'm pretty good in the team when I can just do my job, chill out, got amazing solo laners. So I think we could trick him.
Reggie's the king of like buying free agents high, well past their peak.
Exactly. What would be the most embarrassing thing to happen to TSM since their bloody president was showing their ass? But enough about Instagram.
Jesus.
It's a fact. It's an actual fact. He's the president. I never made them post the pictures, and those are all public. So those are all facts. I'm doing it all totally legitimate within the public domain.
That's true.
If you don't want to do that, go get a side office, take down the Instagram, and we can all fucking, we can go back into private life. That's all I'm saying, Mr. President. That's right. The journalist, I'm like the true hero journalist going after the president.
So the thing I wanted to bring up about Gumayushi, by the way, because I think a lot of people,
exactly.
A lot of people are confused about the pronunciation. So the thing about Gumayushi is that if you translate the letters directly into Korean, the characters for SI are pronounced she in Korean. So that's why it's Gumayushi.
That's what the show's called.
She. Yeah, she. But it's the same thing with Nogari, where it's like, Nogari should not have put a U in there because it means raccoon, but the way it's spelled in Korean, technically it should be like Neo, no, instead, but it's just like, so it ends up being weird when you actually use if you wrote it in Korean, it's very clear how it's pronounced, but when you put it into English, it gets weird very rarely, but if you kind of mislabel it in English characters, so that's why, but it is Gumayushi.
Is it Guma or Gumayushi?
Gumayushi.
Gumayushi. Okay, grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always mess it up and I'm just like, I apologize. I'm just terrible at it. As anyone who listens to any cast I ever do.
Yeah, it's like as soon as if you can read Korean, like as soon as you see it, it's really obvious how to pronounce it because there's only ever one way to pronounce things in Korean, but because it's you just have to know. So yeah, it's just one of those weird things.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.